Welcome to Station WBMCT, Black Middle Class Talk, where we talk, get down, throw the communication around, message, receiver, feedback. Let's get it on. Your host, CC, and your co-host, EB. Let's talk, communicate. Hello. Another day, another week to talk about black middle class talk, the black issues of the day. Welcome to Station WBMCT, Black Middle Class Talk. My name is CC, my co-host here at EB. We're going to chop it up today in words, and we're going to just kind of discuss some issues that is relevant to black middle class that you don't really get in the mainstream media, and sometimes we are dictated to what we can talk about. But if you join this station, we'll talk about anything in any way possible and the way we see it. That doesn't make us right or wrong. It just makes us use our voice to voice our opinion. And I don't think black people get their opinion out as much as it is dictated to them. As always, we have 4 segments of the show. We got the first segment for 15 minutes for the hour will be domestic and international news. The second quarter of the hour will be the subject of the day is gerrymandering. And the third quarter will be education and politics. That's all for our thoughts board that you see when the show starts. And then the last section of the hour, the last 15 minutes, will be entertainment. And today, in entertainment subject, we're going to talk about black college athletes and will they be boycotting the southern schools as a result of the last part of the Voting Rights Act of 1965 being dismantled by the Supreme Court politicians in robes, the Republican Supreme Court, because that's what they've shown themselves to be. It's unfortunate that we have a Supreme Court that's obviously corrupt, from my opinion. But so, as always, we start the show out with EB. He always brings some good domestic news for us, and it always ties in with the international news. I generally do international news, but they get so, in today's Trump world, they get so intertwined, and we can't tell the difference between international news sometimes and domestic news. So, EB, what you bringing in for us today?
Well, like you said, and it was a good segue that you used to say is that domestic news is so closely tied in to international news. You know, we can basically do one and it always tie in with the other. The one that I have for domestic, the first thing I'm going to talk about is the Iran deal. As it stands right now, if you go back and look at the deal that Obama had on the table, the one that Trump was so adamant about getting rid of, is that now Trump is in a situation, is that this deal that they're putting on the table now is worse than the deal that Obama had. And we're giving up less in the same way that he gets on national TV and talk about Obama gave Iran all this money. That's part of this deal now, is that the United States is going to take away sanctions, which is going to allow Iran to cash in on money. And also is that there's the conversation about enriched uranium is not even on the table. You know, and then Trump came on the TV the other day, you know, talking about one day he said, oh, yeah, we're really close to the deal. The next day he came back and said, we're not in no hurry to make no deal. He said, like, let's not rush. You know, and at the meantime, you know, I was watching this television show the other day, and this Democratic senator came on there, and he is, you know, pretty much throwing his hands up and say, hey, what we need to do is get this war over with. You know, so whatever it is, and that's where we are now. He said, whatever it is that they can get on the table to stop this war, that is what we're going with. And like I said, work out the particulars later, but, you know.
And may I throw in illegal war?
Yes, of
This
course.
is an
War of
illegal war.
choice.
And
Yeah.
and then you said the Democratic person stepped in and said that we need to get rid of this,
To get this war over
get
with.
this war over.
Yeah, so in
now,
other words,
and what I want to say is, why is it the Democratic guy or whoever that was stepping in and saying that? So this, when he has no power, the Democratic Party really are powerless. They don't control the House of Representatives. They don't control the Senate. And Congress has the power to declare war. That's their power. So let's just kind of get that straight understanding in the beginning. And as you going back to what you said, now we're talking about international news here. And as you said, Obama had to deal that basically Iran was in check as far as all the things that they are accused of doing. Yeah, getting, I think the big part was the nuclear weapon. And then they have a humanitarian type issues going on. But that's all a moot point right now because Trump tore that up. And so Trump is in a desperate situation right now. And the desperate situation, he can play it off all he wants to. Yeah, and act like he's in charge all he wants to. But basically, he just screwed up the whole world. You got a small country whose GDP is less than that of California. And they're controlling the whole world economy, got it in a straitjacket. And basically, what I see happening, to answer your question, Trump is going to cut tail and run. He's going to claim victory. Oh, we shut him down. There's nothing to see here. And he's going to go and he leaves the situation worse than what it found it. Now, how does that relate to black people? Well, if you go to the gas station or the grocery store, you should be able to put the two dots together. Especially the gas station. Everybody knows most of the oil comes out the Middle East, although we have oil here, but just the way we're a global economy. So basically, we're in this place right now as far as black people are concerned. Don't act like none of these international issues don't affect us. That's ridiculous at this point. I could see maybe you could have made that argument some time ago, but right now, the same thing that the white folks are dealing with, the black folks have to deal with. And so I just want to throw my input on that. That's
it's a good transition because, like I said, is that how it ties in with international, and that's what you just said. Like, see how easy that transition, talking about Trump, and then how it went to international on the world stage. You know, as far as like the gas prices and the tariffs and all, and like I said, it does. You know, if you're not someone that's affected by it, you know, you must be in real decent shape because even some of the folks that's financially savvy and financially stable is that they're feeling a pinch. So I would found them to say is that this is an issue that's a black issue,
right?
You know,
and
black middle class.
And since we're on international news, before we go any farther, I had a few notes down of something that I observed this week. The Palestinians, they get no coverage, and I'm sure they're just as much in genocide as they were this time last year, even worse. They get no coverage. You can cover. I challenge somebody to go on your major networks websites and find something on Palestine. It's going to be a challenge. Now, maybe you can Google it and find it directly, but that's an issue that black people should be aware of because our tax dollars pay for oppression, and we should be well aware of genocide and oppression here in the United States. Another one, the Pope. What did you hear anything on the Pope? What did you hear on the Pope? Let me ask you that.
I think he was talking about AI.
Exactly.
Yeah, that's what
and that was what was dominating the news cycle, right? The AI, right? Did you also know that he apologized for the Catholics' participation in the slave trade?
Right. I remember that.
Right? That didn't even make a bleep on the screen. And I thought they had it flip-flop. You know, the Catholic Church, which definitely had their hands in the slave trade, is hands down. And for the Pope to apologize for that is a major step to me.
It's a major step, but the thing of it is that because of the narrative in which they are trying to put in the check, like you said, that's why it's not something that's going across the news wire, is because that goes against Trump and his administration for, like they say, why talk about In other words, now the Pope brought that slavery thing back up again, because like I say, he's taking out the books, he's taking out of conversation, he's taking out plaques, he's doing anything to take about black history or slavery. And
Right.
then for the Pope to say that, that's one of the reasons why I feel that it's not something that's being talked about that much. Because like you said, that's a big thing. That's national. You got the leader of the Catholic Party, well, not party, I'm thinking about politics now, of the Catholic faith is speaking on behalf of his apology for their participation in it. And he's different, and he walks a fine line, but I can appreciate that he takes those lines and he goes on them and stand by whatever it is that people don't agree with.
Yes, I like that Pope too. I'm not Catholic, but I'm not a Catholic, but I can appreciate a righteous type person. To me, being righteous doesn't have that much to do with religion. You can be an atheist and be a righteous person. Now, when it comes to God and religion, I get it. Religious people have their own judgment values, so forth. But my judgment value is, as far as the religion comes into play and who's right and who's wrong on the other side, that's up to God. But on this side, I know right and wrong. I know that some of the most religious people, if we look at the evangelicals,
Right.
they having a party with Trump on the White House grounds as if they own the country, this man, is there any sin that he hasn't committed? And if there is, we might want to keep it quiet. We might want to keep it quiet because he'll try and do that sin too. Because I don't know of any sin this man, Trump that is, isn't involved in actively. And so you got a bunch of evangelicals, and I want to point out that's a particular religious sect, which evangelicals are like Protestants and Methodists and Baptists. They're a sect of religion. We use, unlike, let's say, if we say missionary, a missionary can just be from any group. He goes out and does mission work. He goes out and preaches the gospel. Evangelicals, you look them up, that's a group in itself, like Jehovah's Witness.
Right.
Evangelicals.
But I've never heard of evangelicals until Trump came into office.
Right. They put him on the stage. In fact, and if somebody wants to challenge me on that, feel free to email us at that email address you see on the screen there, bmctusa@gmail.com. And you can look it up. Evangelicals is a sect in themselves, and that's why they had that whole day on the ground, because they're a big supporter of Trump. A lot of religious groups were supporters of Trump, probably still are. And so you tell me if that's righteous to support. This man's a thief, a liar, a murderer. I mean, there's something else I left out. I mean, if he is, it's a subcategory under those. And so that's all I'm saying, that you have a religious group come out and endorse this man. It was bad enough they endorsed him in 2016. And then 2020, and then you put him back in 2024, back in office, and now here we are on the verge of, collapse. Total collapse. I mean, democracy is pretty much done to me right now. Now, not like when he's out of office, everything's gonna be rebuilt, but it can't be rebuilt in the same way. The Justice Department is totally corrupt, and they were corrupt even to me before then. But go ahead, bro.
But just out of curiosity, when you looked up evangelical, you said you looked up the definition. Is that, what are their beliefs?
Well, that's a good question. I didn't get in. Oh yeah, definitely. Okay. It goes under Christianity. Quote. Let me put quotes around that.
Gotcha.
Jesus Christ, but there's I'm almost certain to be that white, blue-eyed, blonde-haired guy that comes out of Northeast Africa. I'm sure he'd be all blonde 2,000 years ago, right? And so, but as far as their theology and their doctrine, it's a good question. I tell you what, we'll put that on the subject board one day. In fact, our producer's looking it up for us. Maybe we'll come back after break when we get on the gerrymandering subject. But anyway, I don't understand myself how any righteous person could endorse the devil to me, and I say that in a way of saying as a personification of the devil himself is, to me, it's a spirit, but
But
not a person.
I think, and it's sad is that a lot of the things that they saying that happened with Trump, with the assassination attempt and all that, and this one lady came on and she said is that's a sign from God. That's what I'm saying. But like you said, they'll pick them.
Yeah.
But,
so and this was that's pretty much the first
right.
quarter, man. I know we have some kind of ran over some domestic things we got going on. It looked like we're going to have a Democratic senator coming out of Texas, and since I don't know 40 years, I don't know. I never would have thought of that.
About it?
It's going to be interesting. We got
We
got a quote righteous guy running against a Trumpster.
Exactly. So that's going to be a definite test. Exactly.
I want to see the polling and when it's over.
Exactly.
But we'll come back after the break. We're going to talk about our subject today is gerrymandering. So just give us a second. We'll be right back. All right, we're back. The subject of today is gerrymandering. Since the Supreme Court appears to have broken down the last section, I think it's Section 2 of the Voting Rights Act, they call it. And sorry about that. But it was right on cue, really. But the Supreme Court has broken down the last section of the Voting Rights Act of 1965, which I think served its purpose. The Supreme Court has been chipping away with it for the last 20 years since Roberts got on the court. The Republicans play chess. They in it for the long game, and so that's a goal. I'm sure they toasted it up. In fact, I know they went to the six Republicans on the Supreme Court went to dinner with Trump or some dinner with him after that. So, they toasted it up. It's sad and it's corrupt, but you can look it up. And so gerrymandering is the kind of, it's on steroids right now. Everybody's redrawing the maps, drawing the black people off the map, so to speak, as far as voting power. And I don't know. How do you feel about that? In fact, let's put up the definition of gerrymandering before I put everybody on page. And I'll just read it here. Gerrymandering is the deliberate manipulation of electoral district boundaries to give one political party or group an unfair advantage in elections. The process allows for politicians to essentially choose their voters rather than allowing voters to choose their politicians. So is that's about right. And so, and what do you think about that, brother?
It's something that has been going on for years, off and on. They said it. Democrats done it just as well as the Republicans. But the issue that I find with it is that redrawing of districts is supposed to happen every 10 years as based on the census.
Okay.
And of course, when you see census, you see based on, how many you got over here, how many you got. Of course, you draw those lines, and that's the right way it's supposed to be done. Because you got to give people places. Go ahead.
Let me jump in because you ran past it. The census It's what? Yeah, can you clarify?
U.S. Census, that's when they count the American people.
The American people.
Yes, and for us like nationality, you know, nationalities, you know, the size of your family. And this happens every 10 years, and that's when they go around supposedly house to house, knock on doors, and get an accurate count. And then the accurate count is based on your representation in Congress. So if you know you got this big thing, you're gonna have these many senators. If you got this amount, you're gonna have one senator or congressman.
Well, you're always gonna get two senators, no matter what. Every state,
right, yeah, every state got two senators.
You mean
representatives? Yes, based on the number of people that's in no particular district. And the way that this thing have taken a turn for the worse is that our U.S. president went before Texas, and he before there's a lot of things that was going on. You know, it's like they under the table in the back room, but you know, this man is blatant. He came out and told them is that Texas, you all can give us 5 extra seats. So we need you to redraw your line. And then, of course, to offset that, California. But the difference in California and Texas is California put theirs on the ballot to see whether they could do it. Texas didn't. Texas didn't do it, I think.
Well, Texas didn't do it. They started it. They started a fight, but they couldn't finish it because they got ruled against by I think it's by their own state Supreme Court that ruled against them. And the reason why I think is because and I think this is going to happen, in my perspective, they found that if they redrew it, they were going to be behind worse shape because they had redrew it to the max. Right. But their Supreme Court in their state, I think, saved them. Right. But by that time, the fire had been lit, the spark had been lit. I didn't want to cut you off.
Right, no, that's fine. No, but you know, there's two different, from a legal standpoint, there's two different types of gerrymandering: partisan gerrymandering and racial gerrymandering. That's what and that comes up under the 14th Amendment and the Voting Rights Act. You know, this was written before this last ruling came out, as far as like giving you a definition of racial gerrymandering, and it was covered under the 14th Amendment and the Voting Rights Act. And that's when they took that out of the Voting Rights Act. The last thing that they did is when they saying is that you cannot draw district lines based on race. And that was in the Voting Rights Act that covers us to say that you could.
This gets, okay, read that definition, because you said they're partisan and
it's partisan gerrymandering and racial gerrymandering.
And racial. And right now they kind of combine the two together because most black people vote for Democrats. So you kind of killed two birds in one stone with the Supreme Court. Okay, now you brought up the 14th Amendment. Now, I've read the 14th Amendment. It was the 14th Amendment and the 13th Amendment dealt with slavery. You know, because first of all, you got to free the slaves, and then you're going to make them. You got to make them citizens, right? Right. And then I think you get to the 14th, which bars discrimination. I think. Or I know I'm getting this all messed up. You threw a curveball at me, but I just wanted to clear up. We're going to go in the break. I got to go and refresh my mind, which is in one, which is in the other. But as far as this stuff that's going on right now, it's not directly there as what you're saying, insinuating. I don't think. As far as the gerrymandering and so forth,
I'm saying is that this last ruling that they just came up with the Supreme Court, when they say it is that you cannot, but this right here has always been a part. This is legal. Is that it's stately said you cannot dilute the voting power of minority group, violates the 14th Amendment and the Voting Rights Act. But now with this new rule that came out, it don't violate the Voting Rights Act anymore because they took that out, saying that you cannot draw district lines based on race.
Yes. Okay, I go along with that.
Right.
I go along with that. And since you got it all documented, I'm just on.
I'm saying, and the thing of it is, that's why everybody's in an uproar, because they saying is that you are going to consciously redraw something that you know. Even like I was talking to you about earlier, is that South Carolina was talking about redrawing it that was going to take Jim Clyburn out. You know, but then again, they went against that. And it's sad to think that these laws that's in place is that at any given time, based on whatever party is in charge of the House in no particular state, that can have that power to say, you know what, every 10 years one is supposed to be done, but now they just can pick up, and then me and you being in a particular state, we're like, hey.
Right. It's a corrupt thing where the politicians pick their voters. Right. Yes. That's what they're saying.
Right. Instead of voters picking their politicians.
The way it works is you take, let's say you got 15 white people over there, and you got 20 white people over here on this side of the fence, so to speak.
Right.
All right. So what you will do is, to bring down those numbers, you're going to take, let's say, 5 black people over here and put them over here on the other side of the fence, where now what I'm trying to do, now you kind of evenly match, right? 15 to 15. Yeah. But then you take 5 more of the blacks and put them over here. And so you gain yourself an advantage. If that's is that gerrymandering?
Yeah, it's gerrymandering, and this the 2 types of way of you doing. They do cracking or packing. Cracking is what you just said. Split them over here, split them over there, and so your voting power is broken down. Good. Packing is when they take all of you all and draw y'all over here. So in other words, y'all got this smaller group. So in other words, yeah, you can get 1 or 2, but then again, that's all you can get.
That's all you get.
Exactly.
And it's funny you should bring that up, because you just made me think of Memphis, Tennessee. The whole state of Tennessee. Yes. You only got this one. I think that's packing, right? Where you got this one representative out of this one city, and I think it's state. Out of this whole state.
Right.
You got 1 representative for a major city. And it's black or 2, whatever, 3. Right. But that's packing, right? You packed all these black people.
Put them all over here.
So now they want to do what? Cracking.
What I'm saying is that those are the 2 type ways that they do it.
So Claiborne, getting back to Claiborne, since you brought him up, Claiborne is a scene to me for the whole state. Look like wherever Claiborne is that is the representative. That seems to me to be packing. In other words, so I'll just jump to mine the last 2 minutes that we have. I'll just jump to what my perspective is on this. And it's just that. Like you say, Tennessee is my exhibit 1. You telling me out of the whole state of Tennessee, I only, as a black person living in Tennessee, I only get a representative out of one city? You tell me Louisville don't have any type of black
Nashville
don't have any black constituents up there. What representation? So this is a case of what you call packing, and then you get upset about that. The Supreme Court said well, you guys made that district in Memphis that's based on race. You packed them in there based on race. That's unconstitutional. That's the Supreme Court, right? That's unconstitutional. Yeah. You use race, so of course we use race. You know American history. You know how we got to 1965. Right. By the way, I was thinking of that date, 1865 to 1965, when I was born. It was only 100 years. Right. So that's what I'm saying. You see where we come in my lifetime from that point, because up to 1965, black people were being totally annihilated, killed, hung, intimidated, houses blown up, churches blown up, and that stemmed from Reconstruction and the Union pulling out of the South, and that 40 acres in the mule comes in the conversation too. We ain't no talk about that, but anyway, there's a reason why we get to this point and why we needed that. But now, like I said, from 1965 up here to 2026, I think the game has changed. And I'm not one that's up in arms over the dismantling of the Voting Rights Act, only because, like you said, the packing. I think we've been underrepresented anyway.
You saying you don't have a problem with them?
No. They've torn it up systematically over the years. All this hoopla, like you brought up in the last show, all this hoopla, and should have probably been done during Obama time when you had power with the Voting Rights Act.
Right.
You know what I mean? Now we are 2026, and it's been just that bad. And what I'm saying is, no, I'm waiting to see what the result is going to be, because half of the black representatives that you see in Congress on the federal level are representing by districts that probably majority white. You know what I'm saying? So white people do vote for black politicians.
Right, but their main constituents, as you say, is black.
But no,
You know
that's why I was just speaking.
Right, what I'm saying, but yeah, like you got your little nicks and your knacks. You know, I'm not saying that white people don't vote for black people. You know, and that's one of the things that also that they looked at when they was talking about that is that you do the gerrymandering, like you just said with the Texas, is that they start saying, hey, you know, we do it because at the end of the day, you still get a chance to vote.
Yeah.
You still get a chance to vote.
Hopefully.
Yeah.
Hopefully. Okay, well, right now.
Right.
Okay, we have to the break here. We're coming back on the topic board. We're going to really continue this conversation because I'm talking about we want to talk about education in politics. It kind of tie the two together. So we'll be right back after this break. All right, welcome back. As you notice, when we have the introduction to the show, we have a lot of topics on that board, and it's the third section of the hour. And we kind of pull out on that topic board what our subject is. And I want to tie it in because this is going to go into the entertainment section too, the education in politics. And you threw something at me, and I'm going to have to go back and do my homework. When you were talking about the 13th Amendment and the 14th Amendment, I got to go back and see which one was which because they went in tandem together. In fact, I think it's the 14th Amendment that, I'm going to leave it there because that's where the way I'm going to. Do you think we are properly educated in politics? And what do you think about that as far as black people? You think we are properly educated, and how do we get to this point, you know, from Reconstruction when we had the most vibrant result of black leaders that we ever saw in American history, and how are we educated, and how do we get to the Voting Rights Act from flourishing to which I kind of gave an overview of a little earlier, and to this point, are we educated in our history, and then we get mad when the Supreme Court just tears down something what we thought we had. And what I'm saying is, are we educated into what's going on in far as politics and how the game is played?
I think that we are a lot more further along than we have been in the past. But, well, let me rephrase that. I think that opportunity-wise, we are a lot further along. But I don't see us having a real strong base of people educating us on, you know, politics. Back in the day, Barbara Jordan, you know, I can go, Barbara Jordan, I know it, she's Shirley Chisholm. You know, these are folks that got up in Congress and got to the mic and talk about black issues.
Right.
You know,
now, Shirley Chisholm, is she the one that said they don't give you a seat at the table, bring your own?
Yes.
Was that her?
Shirley Chisholm.
Uh-huh.
Yes,
and she ran for president.
President, right?
Okay, that
right.
was go ahead.
Right, I'm just saying, you said that's just one example of somebody that, and you notice there's a trend going now. The two of them names I called, both of them was women. You know, but then again, and what's the young lady? She wasn't a politician. Fannie Mae. Is it Mississippi?
Oh,
Fannie Mae.
yeah, I know you're talking about.
But yeah, okay, but yeah, how she. But I'm saying is that they was educating us on what it is that we was entitled to, and they was stood forward and they was saying is that we are not going to continue to allow you all unnoticed.
Go ahead though.
So we're not going to allow you in any way, shape, or form, just put this to the side and don't take no action on it.
Fannie Lou
Hamer, yes, okay. But anyway, staying that bit, but then again, and it's hard is that when you look on TV now and you see the guys like this dude down in Florida, I think his name Brandon, and then you see Tim Scott, and you see those folks, having a different agenda from what we are accustomed to. You understand what I'm saying?
Yeah, but you say Tim Scott. Tim Scott being out of South Carolina.
Out of South Carolina, yes.
Tim Scott out of South Carolina, and you're saying
that you can see
he's not teaching us?
No, I'm saying he's not. I mean, have you ever seen Tim Scott get on the mic and have any conversation? Not that I remember. Any conversation speaking in defense of black people.
Mm-hmm. And which he don't, and that's why I was saying he's one of the ones who were elected statewide by a majority of white people,
right?
And he is one of the ones who's totally sold out. We can just say that up front, and just being clear about it. I would say he has the personality of Clarence Thomas, hands down.
Yes.
He will do black people no favor, so to speak, and not even a favor. As far as the law is concerned, if the law favors black people, he will stand against it and work to break that law down. Yeah. And that's what Clarence Thomas is. So go ahead.
And what I was getting at is that you have folks that watches TV, and Tim Scott get up there, just saying you turn on TV, and he gets up there. It says Senator Tim Scott, and so the thing that he's saying. He's pushing Trump agenda.
Right.
So the thing that he's saying is that how is it that anybody can grab? Because what you're doing is that you're grasping the fact that that's a black man. But then again, like you said, on face. And so the education, it becomes diluted. But I'm saying, and to be honest with you, I don't feel that we have that type of leader that in the world that teaches. Because we didn't learn it. I'm from Louisiana. We didn't learn it in school.
Civics?
Yes, we didn't. No, these are basic. I mean, you're talking about a vote. You tell you what that do, but I'm saying, but it did not give you because they didn't talk about that. They didn't talk about no Voting Rights Act and none of that. Yeah. I'm from Louisiana. I remember.
Mm-hmm. And they wouldn't have talked about that because that wasn't an issue at that point in time. It only becomes an issue to me. That's just me talking. It only becomes an issue when they've broken down the last part of it. Now it's all gone. When, of course, like you say, they're playing chess. We're playing checkers. That's checkers right there. You're going to wait till they get to the last. It's like you down to your king. I think that's the way you play checkers. And you down to the last hop. And the game's going to be over. What were and that's the difference between chess. You've looked way before you got to the last move. Right. And that's what I was saying. We're not, in my point in bringing up this education thing, we can throw up our arms, and I'm included in this, and get upset because somebody else is upset. But I'm saying that when you look underneath the covers and see how the process is actually done, you'll see, well, you've been getting screwed more than just last year. You've been getting screwed for 40 years, at least, when they started the whole process. And we've went through black politicians before, namely Obama was the chief politician of the United States. And I'm not really warm and fuzzy over him as far as black issues, but he was a decent president, I would say. As I say,
he's a decent person.
Person, yeah. But you wouldn't think he's a decent politician?
No. You were saying is that I feel no warm fuzz. I say, but the difference that stands out more than he's a decent person.
Well, you put me over in that box. Now I didn't say that. I just said.
I'm just saying for myself. I was going. You were saying, politician. I just saying that to me he was a decent person. Yeah, I got issue with a lot of things that he did as a politician.
Yeah, that's why I was at politicians. I don't know what kind of person he is per se. I see the outside, I see the image that we see, and I hear the voice and all that. That's totally. He's a good speaker, excellent speaker. But when it comes to black issues, I don't know if black people got anything significant that anybody else didn't get, and mainly the ACA, the Affordable Care Act. And after that, maybe somebody can educate me anything he did specifically that benefited black people, which when I say that, I'm speaking personally, when I say benefited black people, I'm speaking reparations. I'm thinking this group in particular that's been harmed, or maybe some Native Americans. I'm talking about one particular, and my group, black people, who've been dealing with this for 400 years and counting as far as we get to this gerrymandering. That's old news. You know what I mean? This has been going on. All of a sudden, we get uptight when the game is over, and talking about you cheated and slamming the table and giving good speeches. Come on, please. And the reason why I say we're here now in 2026, I say the game has changed, because when you look at the data, to me it indicates that white people will vote for a black candidate. So when they get done with this gerrymandering and we see what the result is, I'm going out on them and I'm going to say this thing is going to backfire on them drastically, especially if they don't mix the black people in with the white people evenly, which they don't even know where the white people are at right now, their own people, because MAGA is no judgment of where white people are. Man, you've been on the protest line. You talk to those white people out there. They're hot and they're woke. They'll talk to you. If anybody out there think that white people won't talk about race, go out there on that protest line, and you don't even have to bring it up. Just say, "Hey, what you think about what things are going on?"
Well, you're right. Is that because if you look at, crazy it may sound, is that if you look at when they do a protest and when the cameraman says, if you go down and look at the crowd, I mean, you got white, black, white,
That's
black,
right.
black, and it's a cause for black people.
Well, no, I think it's a cause for America.
Okay.
They're not
I
out
hear
there.
what you're saying.
Go ahead.
But no, what I'm saying is that you made the statement is that white people, support issues because you stand on the protest line. But I was just saying, but on those protest lines is that you see more whites out there fighting for what's right for people, Americans.
Right.
That's what I'm saying. It shouldn't be, but that's the way that we see it, though. That it is a black issue. Why aren't black people out there fighting for it?
That's why
you complain about it, but you don't take for no effort.
Well, that's why I want to clear up what you're saying, because making sure I understood you right. I thought you were saying that white people out there fighting for black issues, and I was like, they see what black people went through, and they see their own deck. They see they see what we've been going through for 400 years, and they say, hey, it's our turn, and we don't want to do that. Right. And they're right. I don't want nobody to go through what black people have been through. In fact, I want you to repair what you've sent black people through to build this country. Now that we see what's going, them camps that they're building, right. Yeah, that's for them. That's for white people. They already got us in prison. They know where we are. We're not running nowhere. It's on our 400-year marketing campaign. I mean, you black, go into Walmart, Home Depot, or whatever, Lowe's, walk through there. Yeah, you stand out like a sore thumb, on the protest line. All I'm saying is that white people are protesting for America, which is their right. Yeah. I just happen to be included. We all are. Me and you are out there. I'm protesting for America too. Right. But I'm also going to tell you that this ain't nothing new to me. That's the conversations I have on the protest line. They know it. White people will talk to you more about it than you will talk about it. Like I say, so they're woke. White people are woke. But we take the last, we're going to go to the last 15 minutes, and we're going to talk about entertainment. So that was education and politics. I don't think we're, as black people, as educated in civics as we should be. And I think with this Google thing now, we can educate ourselves. The civics has been taken out of schools. I get that. I had a good civics teacher, black guy, Mr. Owens, rather, and he was great. So
But you know, like say,
yeah,
say
not in the last
say
minute
this
here.
on the last closing, is that I think that they, like they say, flooding the market is that it's too much. I mean, it's just too much, and like you
Okay.
said, and if you put too much for to somebody that has to process all that, they saying the easy way to just step away
They
from
quit. Okay, I agree with that. Unfortunately.
it. Unfortunately.
Okay, we'll take this break here. We're coming back with entertainment, and we're going to talk about black college athletes boycotting the South, the Southern schools. So we'll see how that conversation goes. We'll take this break. Be right back. All right, we're back with this last section here, and we're going to talk about black colleges boycotting the black schools as a result of the Supreme Court breaking down the last section of the Voting Rights Act, and I see the NAAC is leading the call for black athletes to uh, abandon, basically changed wherever they were going, whatever school. Let's say Alabama, Georgia, Ole Miss, LSU. They what they're encouraging the athletes to do is to go to another school in probably North. I don't know what that's about, where they're going to go, but I do agree with the premise because through athletics, we've made tremendous strides as a people. And recently, there's only a few handful of athletes every decade or so, Colin Kaepernick being the last one that I remember, who will take a stand that gallinates everybody nationally. And when Kaepernick took that knee, oh man, that was a huge statement. Now, he got blackballed and his career was over because, they compensated him through the court system about 5 years later after old and feeble, so to speak, as toward the NBA with $500 million. Now, of course, Uncle Sam gets half of that, so he's $250 million. But just the fact that he took a stand, he put all his career on the line for a righteous cause. You get what I'm saying? This is something we was talking about Obama earlier. This is something Obama wouldn't think of. You know what I mean? For black people, for this particular group who were being police misconduct, were being murdered, which wasn't nothing new, but it was on steroids at a certain point. That's where you got the George Floyd kind of was the peak of it, and probably still, for all we know, it's still people still being murdered. I'm sure in broad daylight. But how do you feel about that, man? The black college athletes boycotting the South, the gerrymandering.
Well, if you gonna have a conversation about that, I think that it should apply to not just to Southern schools. It should apply across the board. I know that the focus is being put to the Southern schools because of Louisiana with the gerrymandering and then the Voting Rights Act, and like I said, a lot of that is centered in the South. It's a hard call. It's a hard call because, like you just said, that we have made big strides, and a lot of those strides and opportunities have come through sports. That opportunity to actually play is being afforded by that school. School is going to benefit 3 times more than the athlete will. So by you taking your talents and using it on the field, if you pull yourself away from that, like he said with Kaepernick, is that a stance that you are able to make and still find a good resolve? Everybody can't be a Martin Luther King or Malcolm X or Kaepernick. So you take it like this young kid from South Louisiana having an opportunity to play at LSU, to give him an opportunity to go, are we asking that kid to take that stance for a mass of people? Because his stance is going to be representing, a mass of people, which is black people.
When you say taking the stance, you mean the stance he's going to take is that he's going to go from he's going to withdraw his scholarship.
Right.
He's going to try to go to and by the way, I picked up on what you said about the northern school. Were you insinuating that the northern schools, we can add them into that boycott also? Was that what you were insinuating?
Well, no. What I'm saying is that I know that our focus is going towards the South.
The gerrymandering.
The gerrymandering is in the South. Yes,
the gerrymandering states.
Right, in the states, right. Well, I guess that goes, South Carolina is the South, okay.
Yeah, but they're focusing on the right. Gerrymandering states.
Oh, okay. That's
and in which basically just happen to be all the South. Whole South is gerrymandering right now, so it's basically that whole Bible Belt, we call it.
Right, but I guess what I was saying is that when you asked the question, is that because they've been a lot of ills that the northern schools have done when it comes to black people.
Right, now that's why I wanted to point out, but they're talking about this specific issue of gerrymandering, and they're appealing to the black athletes, which the southern states rely heavily upon the good schools. They get the best athletes, and as I would say, the reason why the black athletes go to your Georgias or your LSUs or your Ole Miss, these big white schools, institutions, is because they get more exposure. You get better exposure. You get airtime, professional. You're getting into professional sports, and so that's the catalyst. But to ask a young man, like you were saying, I think you was going to this, to forfeit that and go, let's say, to an HBCU, to a black school. Now, black schools, well, you're going to get maybe a holiday where you get, up here in Chicago, they'll get that, what is that bowl they always have up here?
Yeah, I know you're talking about.
I forget the name of it. It's a black school. Every year they have 2 black schools playing in Chicago at Soldier Field. And so there's a lot of exposure there, but it's not like going to a major school where you're getting exposure all the time, and that gets you to that next level of being a professional. But I understand that's a hard call for young people, but I'm for that, but I don't think it would be successful. I always say if you're going to do something, make sure that you have your ducks in a row, that you're going to get some results, because I was reading articles, the media is already discounting it as being successful. It's going to be a failure, it's a bad idea and all that. Well, it's better than nothing. That's what I say. Now, I probably would have thought it through more and kind of did a focus group maybe, and then some big name players, get them behind me as a photo op. There's a way of doing things than just willy-nilly throwing an idea out there, because black people wouldn't. You generally at this point in 2026, we're not. So far, this is not your bus boycotting type situation. This is a national thing, and so I don't know. And you don't want to fail when you make these big announcements.
Yeah, exactly. So because, like you say, you put a lot into it, and then when you go, and then you move forward with it, and like you just said, it don't seem like a well thought out plan. Just like do this, you know what I'm saying? But then again, you got to realize, and even go back to that thing I was saying, you asked this young kid to give up a full ride scholarship to a major institution. That's the same one that will cost him, if he went there on his own, it cost him all close to $200,000, for the 3 or 4 years. But now, there are ways that we could channel that without putting it on the backs of those athletes.
Young athletes.
Yeah, there are other ways that we could have did that. And like you just said, and that was very well stated, you don't think, and I'm agreeing with you, that it was well thought out. I think it was like a rash.
Yeah.
Let's do this. You know what I'm saying?
It's an emotional.
Emotion, there we go.
Yeah, it's an emotional.
Right.
In a fight, you don't want to be emotional and punch yourself out in the first round.
Right.
And so, and for the NAACP, I'm not a big fan at the end of they're like missing in action for my whole lifetime. It's like, what do they do? Right. So I send out letters for some donations. But that's another subject for another day. But another thing, I always ask this question in the last 3 minutes that we have. I can't help but notice, and I got to talk about it, the black athletes and the Caucasian women.
Man, can I
pose that to you?
Yeah,
Not because we're talking about the schools, right?
Yeah.
And a lot of these schools in the South, I mean, I go back home to Mississippi, I see a lot of interracial. When I was growing up, that wasn't that stood out. Now it's just another thing.
That stood out. So you saying that was a thing when you?
No, when I was coming up, it stood out if you were with a Caucasian woman. Back then, when I was coming up. Now, you right. And now I'm saying now it's no major. And that's fine, it's no major. But what I want to get to, the question I'm getting to is this a case of when the athletes, they're very popular when they go to these colleges, these big colleges. Is this a case, this is all they're surrounded by is Caucasian women? So the pool, and I know it might come out sound like a bigot, but I don't want to, because a person has a right to love who they want to love. But when the choice is all around you of who you're going to love is all Caucasian, chances are you're coming out with a Caucasian woman. Now, I don't know if that's the reason, or is it just the mindset of self-hatred of, I need a white woman. That's the element of success. That's, I've arrived. I got me a white woman, a big brick mansion house and 80 cars, whatnot. I don't know. I'm trying to get you to tell me. What is the catalyst? Is it self-hatred, or is that just all you're surrounded by as Caucasian?
I will go back to what you said, not to sound that way, but you love who you love, and it was at one time seen as you're saying is that there's not enough of
black women
to
go around.
To go around.
They don't have access to.
Or see, I'm telling you that's why I say that should be a whole topic. That should be a whole topic that we'll look into. Is that because the fact is that because you have a lot of black men that will say is that they don't have, because it's the same thing that you say about Asian and white women is that you don't have them. They don't give you no grief. They don't. You know what I'm saying? Whatever you
said
that.
I didn't say that.
I'm just telling you.
Maybe our producer over here said
that. I'm just saying. These are things I've heard in my lifetime. These things I heard in my lifetime, and I've heard black women say that. Yeah, y'all. That's why you with them, because they'll do whatever you say. Da 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 da. I'm just saying. But that's the thing that they say.
What is that thing you say they'll do? Oh, anyway, right. About at the end of the show.
But at the end of the show, but let me throw this out real fast.
In the last minute.
Dart, the quarterback for the New York Jets, invited
New York
Giants. I'm sorry, that he introduced President Trump at this rally.
Okay.
And then everybody's saying, "What is that?" He has the right to do. You know what I'm saying? But then again, but they also have the right because, like you said, your offensive line.
Yeah, they got it right not to block for you.
But anyway, that's just a good thing that I threw out there.
But it was a good show, brother. Good conversation. Another week, we're going to ask you guys to always hit that subscribe button. Send us an email. Let us know that you're out there and that you're listening. And we're in the 5th month of a year's run, to coming to the end of the month, actually. And we got 6 more months to go, and then we're going to wrap this up. So we hope we can get some topics out there. If you have some things in mind, let us know. And as always, and to those who are Fanaloo Hamers fans out of Mississippi, and like I say, my brother here hits me all the time off guard. she's a hero, and I just wanted to correct that. We weren't able to remember her name, but she's remembered as a great activist and a great human being. And she's one of the ancestors who would always, always tell you, always, always do the right thing.
Peace.
See you next.